When Will asked me to talk about performance, it made me think about the very first time that I performed Shakespeare. As Gregor's very kindly said, I spend most of my life now talking about Shakespeare, performing Shakespeare as an actor, creating performances, producing theatre, and writing books about Shakespeare from the point of view of performance rather than from the point of view of literature, from literary criticism. Because that's the way that I was introduced to Shakespeare. And well, a moment of honesty. I hated Shakespeare when I was in school. And it wasn't until I first performed Shakespeare that the works began to make sense to me. When I started out as an actor, I was doing the high school musicals. And when I was in school, I wasn't the best singer. So I was often given lots of character parts rather than parts that had songs. I would come on with a wig and a beard and a walking stick and be an old man. And then I'd take all of that off and rub some grime on my face. I think we were doing Oliver, the musical. And I'd be a chirpy young man walking down the street. And I played five characters in this performance of Oliver in this high school musical. And there was a director in the audience, and she invited me to come and audition for a production of Shakespeare. And I said, "Oh no, no, I don't like Shakespeare. That's not really for me." And she said, "No, please come and audition." And I did. And she cast me as the part of Ariel in The Tempest. Now, for those of you that don't know, The Tempest is one of Shakespeare's last plays. It's set on a desert island, and it features a wizard, Prospero, and his daughter, Miranda, who's like a princess, and a king and his son, the prince, and all of their followers get shipwrecked on this island. And the prince and the princess fall in love. But also on the island with Prospero the wizard is a spirit of the air called Ariel, and Caliban, who's a half man, half fish, son of a witch. Yes, that's witch. And I got cast as Ariel, the spirit of the air. And I was happy about this. It's a lovely part. But I was also 17. I just passed my driving test. I'd just gotten contact lenses, gotten rid of my glasses, and I was just starting to make friends. And all of my friends were planning to come to the first performance. And I spent 10 weeks, because it was amateur dramatics, every Monday night and Thursday night, rehearsing this play. It's a comedy, so it was fun. But then after rehearsing for 10 weeks, all the jokes stop being funny because you've heard them so many times. You've heard them over and over again. And the style of rehearsal is very much finding the choreography, finding the blocking of the movement of each scene and practicing it and practicing it and practicing it until that choreography is embedded in your memory. And whilst we were practicing and rehearsing for all of this time, I realized I I don't know how to fly, which you might think was a rather straightforward and obvious realization to make. But of course, Ariel is the spirit of the air. And all of these characters imagine Ariel to be flying around the stage. And I thought all of my friends are going to come to this show and they're going to imagine, they want to see me fly around the stage. And, I thought, well, I'm an actor. I can be physical. Yeah, I mean, how do you, I can meditate for the rest of my life, but I'm never going to levitate. And I thought maybe it will all come together when I get the costume. And usually with amateur dramatics, you get the costume about the same time as the dress rehearsal, the first time everything comes together, the costume and the light, the audience are there. And I got to the dress rehearsal is usually the night before the first performance. So we'd been rehearsing for 10 weeks and I still didn't know how to play Ariel. And I get to the theater. I drove to the theater because I passed my driving test. And I got to the dressing rooms and everyone was so happy. Um, my mother was playing Miranda and she'd been given this beautiful dress. My father was playing the old counselor Gonzago, and he'd been giving these wonderful robes. Peter, who played the wizard, was giving these amazing like magical cloak and this staff, and it had like magic sigils down it. And the prince looked very princely in his costume. Brian, who played Caliban, the half man, half fish, son of a witch, well, he'd had a great time because if you want to play Caliban, if you want to play a half man, well, then, taking on the physicality, if I'm a man, then if I'm a half man, then maybe I'll hunch over a little bit. And then half fish. So I don't know. That's just me trying to be a fish. And then son of a witch. So Caliban is evil. So half man, half fish, son of a witch. That was sort of Brian's physicality, and he was given this amazing like netting because he'd been caught in the sea. There's the fish, and he had all this sort of like he looked disgusting. He looked gross, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. What do I have? And I looked around, and the dressing room had light bulbs all the way around the edge of the mirror, and there was my name by the mirror. So I thought, well, this is where my costume is. And I looked, and where my name was well, a handkerchief. This is a handkerchief. And I thought, how am I going to put that on? And I looked underneath the handkerchief, and there was another one. That was nice. I had two handkerchiefs, and there was a piece of string and a pot of paint, and everything was golden. The handkerchief was golden, the string was golden, and the paint was golden too. So I covered myself in gold paint and managed to find a way to attach the handkerchiefs with the string. And yeah, by the time I finished, I looked like a candle, a lit candle, and of course my hair being the flame of that candle. And I didn't really feel that it helped me fly in any way. If anything, I was a bit more worried about the wind because North Wales, which is where I am now, which is what you can see behind me, North Wales, it can be very windy. And well, the costume was very drafty. Let's put it that way. Um, so it wasn't the best dress rehearsal for me, I must admit. And I get to the theatre the next day for the first performance, and all of my friends are coming, and I still don't know what I'm going to do. How do I perform the part of the spirit of the air? And we get to the beginning of the performance. There's a shipwreck. Then Peter the wizard comes on and his daughter. And after they talk for a little bit, he calls for me. He calls Ariel, come, my spirit, come, he says. And I'm off to the side of the stage and I'm crouched behind a wall, just behind the audience, just above the audience and behind them. And I hear him call my cue. I know that that's my turn to come on stage, but I'm not moving. My feet seem to be stuck to the ground. And he calls again, come, my Ariel, come. And my body still doesn't want to go on stage, apparently. And for the third time now, Prospero, Peter calls, come, my Ariel, come. And of course, he's getting a bit nervous now because I haven't turned up on stage. And evidently, my feet decided that they were going to go on stage, even if the rest of me didn't want to. And I ran down this little path, up and over this rise, and I leapt over the top of the first row of the audience. And the next thing I remember, the show was over. Everyone was applauding. We were bowing. And after the bows, we went backstage, and I turned to Peter, who was playing Prospero the Wizard, and I said, what happened? And he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, you flew. Now, of course, I didn't actually fly, but I found something like what we call a flow state. Now, the flow state, you've experienced this when all of your preparation, all of your planning, all of your ideas, all the things you want to say, all the things you need to say, all the things you're inspired to say, come to you and you forget where you are. You forget really the passing of time. And I realized in that moment that the reason that I hated Shakespeare in school was because I was trying to engage with something that was written for performance, and not just written for performance, but written for people to learn by heart and to speak, but to speak to an audience that was listening. That was the revelation for me that I hadn't experienced in school classrooms, that these works, these plays of Shakespeare, and of all plays, of course, they are wonderful things in and of themselves. But when you connect them like a car to a battery, and the battery, of course, is the audience, then the thing lights up and bursts into wonderful life. There's an incredible relationship between audience and artist. The one without the other is nothing. An artist without an audience is just a person standing in space. An audience without an artist to watch are just a group of people sitting together. Might be cozy, but there's nothing happening until the two link together. And as Simon said earlier, link together to create a unique rapport, an engaging and memorable experience. And as Jeremy mentioned, that team and community that comes from a group of artists gathering together to create something special together, like putting on a play, has such a resonance between a group of students, a group of young learners, a group of people that are open and wanting to learn, and the person that guides them and leads them through that experience, you all, the teachers. Simon talked about the how of performance and teaching. And Fabiana mentioned, she talked about the story that you're telling. Think about for a second, not what I've been telling you, but how I've been telling it to you. Think about the fact that I chose this background, books here, but plants here, that the lighting is not just to make sure that you can see me, but that is nice and gentle, and also a little Christmas tree lights too. It's creating a mood to balance or to offset the content that I'm sharing with you. And beyond the practical side of performance, being seen, making sure I'm standing here rather than here, and being heard, making sure that I'm speaking as clearly as I can rather than muttering or speaking really fast or something like that. Think about my body language as well. The fact that I've chosen to stand to give this talk rather than sit, that makes me naturally more active. It makes my talk naturally more dynamic too. The plants in the background, and well, you'd see the Welsh mountains if it wasn't raining, are my backdrop rather than a blank wall. And bringing a natural element with the plants and the outside, but also a sense of scale. You can see perhaps into the distance across the Welsh countryside. Subconsciously, that gives a sense of the epic, of the grand, of the big. And of course, that's what we're trying to do today, is explore ideas that we might think have become habit or everyday in your years and years of teaching practice, and think about how much bigger they actually are. These things that you do are offering seeds to the next generation of young minds and hearts, and who knows what those next minds and hearts will do to this world that we're living in. A sense of the epic, a sense of the natural, and a consideration into how you perform, not just what you perform. Some of the things I've learned from performance that have come into my life, that have come into my teaching. I no longer rehearse for 10 weeks when I make Shakespeare plays. I now rehearse for 2 or 3 days, just like Shakespeare's actors did. My company and I, we make our Shakespeare productions in about 2 or 3 days, which means that we can travel around the world and turn up and ask people what play they want and make it for them in a few short days. That means, though, we can't choreograph movement for weeks and weeks and weeks. We can't plan. So we don't plan, we prepare. Rather than sticking to choreography, rather than sticking to your teacher's plan and being unable to change if the class is in a mood that you weren't expecting. Perhaps for some reason they're sad, or perhaps for some reason they're overexcited. Rather than to have a plan that you have to stick to have a tool bag of tricks and techniques to draw on so you can shape the content to the class that's here today, not the one that you imagined would be there last night when you were making the plan or the week before. This flexibility allows for turning obstacles like the person not being there, or the one particular thing that you really needed to do the class that you forgot or is broken. These obstacles, when you are able to be flexible, obstacles can turn into opportunities. The number of times I've been in a performance and someone has forgotten the main prop, and instead of it stopping the play and destroying the night, it's become the great opportunity for comedy, for laughter, for improvisation. And that's the thing. We worry so much about making mistakes, not just as actors, not as teachers, but as people in life. We're so afraid of mistakes. And I think this is partly because a lot of modern and mainstream education punishes mistakes. You must not be wrong. There's no room for being wrong. If you're wrong, then you must stay behind. If you're wrong, you must do the year again. If you're wrong, you get more homework. The problem around that is it stops people being courageous. It stops people daring. Fail. Fail again. Fail better, said the playwright Samuel Beckett. Innovation and creativity, in order to be innovative, in order to come up with the next ideas that are going to save this world, we must allow ourselves and each other and our students to fail, to try things out, to fail, to try it again. That's how we break new ground. In order to do that, we need to be vulnerable and we need to be courageous. We need to be vulnerable because we have to open ourselves up and allow the possibility of being wrong in front of people. And that takes courage. It takes huge courage to try new things, to dare to do things differently. And that's what I'll leave you all with today. The idea of, in your preparation, in your flexibility, in your turning obstacles into opportunities, dare to be vulnerable, dare to be courageous, and dare to inspire our next generations. Thank you.